Welcome, dear listeners, to Satanists Nextdoor. We're your hosts, Lilin Levine.
And Tommy Lilin.
Whether you're an open-minded, curious onlooker or a fellow Satanist seeking camaraderie, our goal is to share our personal experiences and delve into the intricate tapestry of Satanism in our daily lives, occasionally inviting other guests to share their unique perspectives, leaving no pentagram unturned. We'll explore how our beliefs shape our views on society, dive into struggles and triumphs we've encountered, and reveal the humanity that unites us all. So grab your favorite chalice and join us on this captivating journey. Satanist Nextdoor is ready to peel back the curtain and offer you a glimpse into our world, one captivating episode at a time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Satanist Nextdoor. So today we are winging it a little bit, in a sense, but we're going to be talking about, disownment, rejection that a lot of Satanists and other communities experience from people that they love. Their own family, people that are supposed to be supporting them unconditionally, loving them unconditionally. Yet when they become public, how much public that is really, each person's choice. They often receive or are met with negative effects from their family, or reactions, I should say.
Yeah, varying degrees of negative reaction, definitely. And I know for you, this is a very personal subject because it's something that you've experienced quite a bit recently.
Yeah, I mean, we'll dive into a bit of, I'll get a little personal and kind of dive into my experience. So yeah, when we're talking about this isn't just things that like we've kind of heard through the grapevine or anything like this. This is, some of this stuff is real, tangible, actually experienced it myself, and know other people who have experienced it as well. And I guess I would say that, we see rejection of people from their families for a multitude of reasons. Mm-hmm. We have the religious factor, mm-hmm. that if somebody comes out and they're of a different religion, then their family, does reject them. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes you have a very supportive family, but unfortunately, quite often, we see people that are rejected from their family. And to me, I've argued this for years, or not really even an argument. It's just, I boil it down to the simple fact of what it is. You believe something different happens to you when you die. So because of that, I'm not going to associate with you in this life.
Which is bizarre, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't tangibly express afterlife as a real thing. You can't. There is no way to prove it is or isn't something that we're going to experience or not. Even me, from a perspective of a very non-theistic, atheistic point of view, I can't definitively say nothing happens when you die. Right. There's no way for me to say that. But on the same note, no one who comes from a faith perspective can definitively say what happens when you die. So it's so strange to me to give up an actual tangible relationship, a valuable relationship with people you love or are supposed to love unconditionally for a potential thing that could happen.
Yeah, and we could talk a little bit about my situation. I grew up, my parents raised us atheists. Mm-hmm. If you talk to my parents now, you would never know that. And, they, sometimes when they talk about our childhood, my brother and I will look at each other and be like, are we talking about the same childhood here? Because you guys weren't religious nutbags when we were kids, but they certainly are now. And so it's odd that, when you see such a massive shift in the way that people are, even within our marriage, you've seen when you first met my parents, mm-hmm. they were pretty much still basically atheist or agnostic or whatever you want to say. They every moment of their life was not about God. And
for sure. And I'll even to put a little bit more perspective around it, when I met your parents, they were not theistic, maybe a little agnostic. They definitely leaned towards different types of beliefs. They always had a curiosity around it, but your dad used to do things like search for the SETI project to look for extraterrestrial signals, and your mom went through an experience where their parent became very religious, and they expressed a lot of remorse over the fact that they couldn't have a relationship because everything began to focus around their beliefs.
Yep.
And contrast that with today, where unfortunately, they're kind of doing the same thing to their loved ones by becoming so fervent in their beliefs that they're almost are ostracizing other people.
Yeah. So for me, I've been a Satanist for about 30 years, and I've been pretty out about it. I mean, this isn't like a surprise, to anybody that knows me at a either friendship level or has known me for the last few decades. Nobody's should be like, oh my God, Tommy's a Satanist? I never knew. I wear Hail Satan shirts. I've got tattoos that are satanic. I've always argued against the Christian church. I remember even when my parents started down their journey, I actually kind of told my dad what would happen. I forecasted the next 10 years, and it happened almost exactly as I said, because I understand the way that the churches indoctrinate people and bring them in and then separate them from...
I wouldn't even say that you've traditionally argued against the Christian church. I think that you've argued passionately against extremism, especially that you see in the more evangelical branches of Christianity.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I don't argue against the Christian church itself. If you read the Bible and you read the types of things that Jesus did, Jesus was actually pretty woke.
Yeah, especially for their time, because in reality, you would find, according to the stories, Jesus with prostitutes, Jesus with criminals, Jesus with eunuchs, people that were typically cast off by society because they were not considered to be of society. They were rejected by society. And according to these stories, which I think have some pretty decent things in them metaphorically, it was something that Jesus decided was to try and reach out to these individuals, to give them a sense of belonging, to help them to feel loved and accepted regardless of how society might see them. Sound familiar? So to sit there and say the things that I've heard people say and utilize the Bible as a way to defend that is very strange and concerning.
Well, yeah. And so when I speak out a lot of times against Christianity, I am speaking out against evangelicalism, fundamentalist evangelicalism, because they're the ones that, at least from my experience, have taken the Bible and have weaponized it.
Right. And part of that experience has been what you personally lived through, where your parents began to become more extreme in their beliefs and then began to expect certain things or reject certain things. And I think from my perspective, what I saw was we ended up having a very heated discussion after we had noticed our oldest daughter really struggling with some things that your mom and dad had kind of passive aggressively done. A big one was when there was, I think it was a Property Brothers or something. They watched that network a lot that had all the home buying and selling and whatever the crap. And a gay couple was looking to buy a home. Like, okay, gay couples do. And then your mom jumps up to grab the remote to change the channel and says something like, I don't understand why these people have to push these kind of things in other people's face. It's like, what, buying a home as a couple? Isn't that what people do? But our oldest daughter was there and witnessed it, and it was, upsetting. It was painful. It felt like a personal rejection, and how could it not? Because she and her, girlfriend at the time, now fiance, they are gay.
Yeah. And open about it.
Yeah, it's not a secret. They are aware that they are a couple, and to do that in front of them was obviously, they didn't think about the ramifications of that. And then they would often make statements like, we don't accept, gay lifestyle, but we love you.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not, you're not accepting and you're not showing love by directly saying something that rejects who a person is. It's not like she chose to be gay, it's who she is.
Yeah, and I do think we need to, make some clarifications here. So, we see people get disowned, kicked out, rejected by their family, a number of things for a few reasons. There's religion, which religion is a choice. So it is my choice to be a Satanist. I've made that choice in my mind. It fits best with who I am. I've explored other belief systems. They do not fit with who I am, so I would be lying to myself and just playing a role of somebody that I'm not. There's political, again, a choice, what ideology you line up with. And then there's sexual identity and gender, and that is not a choice. That is who that person is. And yet so often, so very often, we see the LGBTQ plus community completely rejected by their family members for who they are. Mm-hmm. And it's because, well, there's a multitude of reasons. Some of them are religious and some of them are just ignorant. They think that they can change.
And some of them are personal. I truly believe that there are parents out there that do come to understand that this is who their child is. But I think some people have built up an idea of who they wanted their child to be, who they saw them becoming. And when something massively deviates from that notion, it causes fear, which causes anger, and because anger is a secondary emotion. And a lot of these parents lash out because they are hurt by something that they had imagined.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they want to, a lot of parents try and live vicariously through their children.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. That's what we see a lot of parents do. And that's wrong. One, you already had your life. This is your child's life. Mm-hmm. If you had dreams and aspirations for your child that don't line up with who your child is, that is your issue. Mm-hmm. That is not your child's issue. That's not something for you to put on your child. That is your issue to work through. And I think you're right. And we saw something very similar to that with our daughter's fiance. I mean, they were together for a very, very long time. And I'm talking like they've been together almost 10 years now.
I think since sophomore year in high school.
Yeah. And so it was about 7 years in before our daughter's fiance opened up to her parents. But to not know this was just willful ignorance, because they did everything together. They went to the prom together. They went to homecoming together. She never had a boyfriend. They were always, they were obviously dating, and mm-hmm. to pretend like you didn't know this is just blatant willful ignorance. And it came from, because we've heard direct statements that her mother wanted a different life. She envisioned the quintessential wedding with a man and having children. Guess what? You can still have children even as a gay couple. Mm-hmm. There's in vitro, there's adoption, there's all sorts of options for that. So those dreams don't have to go away.
No. According to some very official Twitter sources, gay people can in fact not have children, apparently. I don't know. That's a joke.
Yeah,
there are no official
official Twitter sources.
I guess X source. I don't know. What the fuck ever.
Yeah. Well, all I know is since I got my vaccinations, my 5G is like blaring, and I have awesome internet connection.
Mine isn't better. So.
You need to get the security patch upgrade. They did a patch. And I know we've had the same amount of vaccinations. So maybe the last batch that you got, maybe it didn't have the security upgrade in it. So you should.
I need to find a way to do my update.
Yeah, you should see if you can update your 5G.
Okay.
It's really important, because that's where the Antifa meetings are broadcast through.
Oh shoot!
So that's why
I wondered why I didn't get my reminder updates for my meetings.
You're not getting them because you don't have the security patch.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
and the security patch was to block the Q listening devices out there. So
you're now dismissed, sir. We're not going into this Alex Jones type shit. Thank you very much. No.
Yeah, we'll do another episode on Alex Jones. Fuck you, Alex Jones. And and we'll do another episode on that shit. You know, and so these were things that we heard directly, you know, so I know that's part of the reason why. And I just, as a father, I cannot wrap my head around disowning my children or for anything.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think we've had some really great discussions where you've said, you know, I don't think I fully understood just how negative and how awful of a situation it was that my parents, you know, had done this, that, or the other, because I didn't know from a parental perspective what that meant. And now as a parent, I'm just that much more confused and frustrated and aggravated by choices that they made.
Yeah. I mean, so for people that don't know me and all of that, I mean, I was kicked out of my house when I was like 15. You know, at 15, you don't have a car. You likely don't have a job. You can't sign any legal contract, so you can't get an apartment. You can't do anything, you know, at that age. And that is just pure abandonment. You know, I mean, there's no other way to put that. Now, if you talk to my family or my parents, they'll try and make it sound like, you know, I was this awful human being. I was smoking some dope. Whoa, you know, holy shit.
Awful, I can't imagine.
But again, you know, like I said, I didn't quite understand the gravity of that until I became a parent. And until I saw my children grow into their teenage years and be like, wait a minute, this was the age that I was booted out of my house. What in the fuck? Who the hell would do that to their child and then still claim that they, you know, love and care for them? You know, they called it tough love back in the 80s with Reagan and all that shit. It was tough love. You know, tough love is bullshit. You know, I'm sorry, you are not loving your child by disowning your child. You are not helping your child by disowning them or rejecting who they are. And that counts whether they're, you know, whether they have a different religious belief, whether they have a different sexual identity or gender than what you believe they do, you know, or even if they have a different political ideology. You do not love your children by rejecting them, and we see it so often. It you know, my story isn't quite as dramatic as other people's because I never had this great relationship with my parents, so there wasn't this big, you know, it wasn't like an emotional shock or an emotional rift for me.
Right.
You know, especially now that I'm older, when they, you know, found out, oh, you're a Satanist. I never knew that. I knew you kind of dabbled, but nobody's comfortable around a Satanist. It's like, you've been comfortable around me for, you know, 30 years or so. You know, what changed overnight? You found out some knowledge. You know, so that didn't really bother me, but I do see where it does bother some people who are younger.
Well, rightfully.
Yeah, they've had a good relationship with their family, or they thought they've had a good relationship with their family. They thought that they could be open and honest with their family about who they really are. And again, this can be religion. This could be sexual identity or gender. You know, they don't feel comfortable with who their parents believe they are. This is who they really are. You know, and they think they can be open, then all of a sudden they get completely rejected and they get disowned. And
which is like that's the kind of trauma that I don't think you can't really just recover from that, because your belief in the world is, this is my safe place. This is where I can always come back to. These are the people that will love me unconditionally. All the things that you're taught about family, right? And then to just be unceremoniously just rejected outright, cut off, and just disowned in some cases is probably one of the most traumatic things that a person is going to experience in their life.
Yeah. You know, and then we hear Christians say, I got asked directly from my parents when they found out that I was a Satanist. You know, again, willful ignorance that, you know, they don't know up until that case. But, you know, we also see it on social media all the time. People will ask, you know, will you let your children be Christian? And my answer to my parents was the same as we generally ask anybody else. My children are allowed to be whatever they want, and I will love them, and I will, you know, I will respect their decision. It is their choice as far as what belief system they decide to follow. That's their journey. It's my job as a parent to offer some guidance, answer questions,
be a sounding board.
Offer some education. Did you know this? Did you know that?
Share skills, cooking, just different tips about living your general life.
Yep. It is not my job as a parent to say, we are Christians in this house and you will be a Christian or else.
Right.
That's indoctrination.
And you see this in so many different forms, like you've mentioned, whether it's because, people believe that homosexuality is a bad thing, whether it's religious or not, or people that have political ideologies that they align with, and that goes for all political ideologies. People have been rejected because of, all the things from conservative all the way to liberal, because there's very strong feelings on one side or the other. And when you do that, you do a couple things. You reinforce the fact that, well, I obviously picked the right thing because look at how I'm being treated. And the other thing is you have just created a rift that may be unrepairable between yourself and someone that you supposedly love. So you have to think about the long-term ramifications about what you're doing in every interaction, when you're dealing with heavy subjects like this.
Yeah. And there is this false belief that as a parent, my kids will just love me no matter what,
right.
Or that I can do no harm, and that they will always, be there. And there are some scars that cut deep enough that, I tell people that it doesn't matter if it's their parents or a stranger. If somebody harms you, and if somebody is actively harming you, you remove that person from your life. Blood is not thicker than water. Your family doesn't get a free pass just because they birthed you or whatever. They don't get to abuse you, and cause harm.
And I know as a parent, I haven't always been perfect. I know I've made plenty of mistakes. And the thing that I always try to do is recognize the areas, especially when my kids come to me or my loved ones come to me and say, hey, this happened and it made me feel this way. Or that something you did was just outright wrong. Your job is then to rectify that. And we've talked about the concept between one another of radical forgiveness, that you're just supposed to forgive someone regardless of whether or not they deserve it. And that really is one of the things that rubbed your parents the wrong way, because that, I think, was the impetus to the satanic comment. And I felt really bad because I think I was the one that blurted out, well, I'm a Satanist and I don't believe in just forgiving people to forgive people. And then it turned into it devolved into a non-conversation, honestly. But it was just this idea that, because we've done something and we all disagreed from one vantage point or another, we just need to move on and pretend it didn't happen. And that, to me, is not functional. We can disagree as people, but I accept you for who you are. And if you choose not to accept me and continue to do things that are harmful to me emotionally, psychologically, then I'm not going to choose to involve myself with you. And if you'd like to move forward, you're going to have to change that behavior.
Yeah, and the biggest one was with my children, or I should say our children. They're only mine. Was with our children, either some of the ways that they were being treated, the bigoted type remarks, and they took great offense to, the word bigot being used. But I'm sorry, if you're saying bigoted things, you're a bigot. I don't care who you are. And I will call you out. And so if I'm going to call out my own family, don't try and say bigoted remarks around me and think that you're going to get a free pass, because, if I'll call out my own family, I'm going to call out anybody. But it was that sort of stuff that sort of was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because again, I was used to being rejected in a sense by my family. That was just the way it had always been. You had pushed really hard when we got together for me to try and repair that, because of you wanted the children to have, grandparents, because you had a very strong relationship with your grandmother, and that was really all the family you had. And so you didn't have the family sort of dynamic that it looked like I had from the outside.
Right.
Come to realize, it was a lot different once you kind of got into that. But we did try. And again, when when we were first together, and for many years, I would say decades, my family was non-religious. And then somewhere about 10 years ago, they went off the religious deep end, and they've become completely radicalized, extreme Christians that, we're not religious, we know the truth sort of thing.
Now we're getting into indoctrination talk.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I don't truly in my heart believe your parents wanted to be hurtful. Just to be clear, I know that they said and did things that were hurtful, regardless of what they may have meant. But I do believe that they truly love you and the kids. I just don't think they were able to see past what their personal beliefs were and how the things they said or the ways they acted were harmful to people. Yeah. And that's not a free pass. But I do truly know, having known them, that they love their grandkids. I do know that. I just don't think they understand how certain things affect people.
Yeah. And again, we're using this as an example because it's something that's tangible. We can speak to firsthand and say, this is what happened. And we see this happen all the time.
Oh, yeah.
We see this with tons of, people either from the satanic community, other alternate religions, whether they be pagan, Wiccan, whatever. And we see it a lot with the LGBTQ plus community as well.
And I think I've seen this a lot throughout my life because, one, I didn't have a relationship with parents. It just wasn't ever a healthy thing. It just wasn't a thing at all. And so I spent a long time idealizing this idea of what a family was and what parents were. And so one of the things you pointed out when we met, you had a mom and dad. They lived in a nice, home. It seemed very much what I thought normal families were. Come to find out, even within normal families, there's varying degrees of dysfunction, like you experienced. But, it's like when you see... I grew up partially in a really dysfunctional home, and then I went into foster care. I spent some time in some different places throughout that journey, and I saw it time and time again. Kids rejected for being, perhaps they were gay. Or another one that was really big was a very religious family would have a kid that just didn't connect with their beliefs. Not that they were of a different belief. They just rejected or didn't agree with those beliefs. They didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. They chose not to engage with it and said, I just don't get it. It just doesn't make sense to me. The parents would actually go so far. And this is something I actually personally saw, heard the discussions, saw the parents come visit with this kid. The parents were convinced that this kid was a demonic presence that was infiltrating their home and destroying it. And again, this is an indoctrination thing. This is not like a normal critical thinking human being has these thoughts. But this kid was removed from the home for nothing other than not understanding, how any of it made sense.
They were like, what, 12?
12, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why I harp on evangelicals a lot, is because they do literally walk around with this spiritual warfare type belief. They've taken the Bible and they've weaponized it. And so they think like somebody like me walks into their house, I've got a horde of demons with me that I'm bringing into their house. And, people either have demons or angels around them, and it helps influence the objective world that we all live in. And my hordes of demons, when I come into their house, they're going to kind of hang around the house if they don't clean it out. And they'll whisper things into their kids' ears. And so the reason why Jimmy's being bad is not because Jimmy's rebelling or anything. It's because, Tommy brought his hordes of demons into the house, and these demons are whispering into Jimmy's ears. And it's that sort of fucked up shit that literally, this isn't make-believe. You go to some of these evangelical churches, this is the sort of stuff they believe. They believe wholeheartedly in spiritual warfare, and that this is the stuff that's happening. And I can't begin to explain just how damaging that is, and the level of indoctrination that takes.
It's crazy confusing to me, and this is coming from... I didn't grow up in a religious house whatsoever. I was not exposed to religion in that way. The only place I was exposed to religion is started out with like my mother attended an AA, and in those programs they have programs for kids. They give you Bibles.
Yep.
They talk a lot about different strengths that you can get from being religious. And so there were periods of time when things were really bad as a small child, that hearing this, it sounded like if I just believed hard enough that maybe the bad things happening in my life would stop. And I quickly realized that it didn't make sense. So that was my first experience with religion. It's just, you can't rely on something that doesn't exist to change, things that are out of your control. There's nothing that you're going to do with that. And so, I didn't understand it. And then as an adult, I said, hey, let's experience it. I would like to try church. We tried a few churches for quite a long time. I wanted to understand what it was about. Why was it so appealing? Does it actually do anything? And again, I did wholeheartedly dive into it. And again, I found myself I loved the camaraderie. There was a lot of really, truly beautiful people that did have very good intentions. And then there was, people that are shitty no matter what. It doesn't matter what they believe or don't believe. But, it was interesting. And again, I didn't find the idea of the higher power was neat. The idea that you could achieve all these things, that's cool. But it wasn't real. It was metaphorical, and it was something that you could use to lean on to give you strength to do things and get through things. But that's true of anything, you know. But it was interesting, and there were, again, good people. It just wasn't something that made sense to me. So I understand why people go, the community, the camaraderie, the family environment. A lot of people don't have family as a way that they've built a family. So I get it. But that's not a reason to reject people that are living in your life. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, and like you touched on, I didn't quite understand this until I was a parent. I mean, when I was kicked out at 15, it sucked. As a 15-year-old, you have a couple choices. You either, hopefully the goodwill of, somebody else will take you in. That's what happened to me. One of my friend's parents was kind enough to take me in and call my parents up and cuss them out and tell them, you don't throw your child out of your house. It's not how you fix your problems, and that's not showing love. I had a couple teachers do the same thing too. They were just flabbergasted. According to my parents, that's the way it was done back then. But yet I had plenty of friends that smoked dope, and none of them were kicked out at 15. But I didn't quite understand that until I became a parent, until my kids reached that age. And then I was like, holy shit, how would I expect a 14, 15, 16, hell, even a 17-year-old child to be able to survive out in the world with no money, tossed onto the street, here's a suitcase, pack your shit, and get out. You're basically rejecting them for, you're putting them out there to die, almost, in a sense.
Well, that's definitely a possible result. I don't know that they were like, oh, hey, we can rid ourselves of this kid by just throwing him out on the street. I really think in some twisted way, they thought if you had experienced this traumatic thing, that maybe it would just shake you into whatever they thought you should have been. Yeah. I don't know. But it's bizarre. Anybody
that knows me knows that it doesn't matter what you do to me. You are not changing who I am. I think my brother told me a couple of weeks ago, and I'm in my late 40s. My brother's in his mid 40s. He was like, you're like the most sane person I have ever met that is like just who they are. Nobody's changing you no matter what experience they give you or anything like that. And he meant it in a complimentary way. In other words, I am who I am. And either you like that or you don't like that. You deal with it or you don't deal with it.
See, and that's a good example. You guys do have a good relationship, and he has certain beliefs. And the great thing is you guys can see from each other's perspectives and appreciate one another for who you are, and that's fine. Yeah. And that's healthy. And he's always been a really supportive person that way. And that's a great thing to have. And that's how it should work.
Yeah.
I feel certain things. You feel certain things. I believe certain things. Where are our commonalities? Where are our differences? Cool. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. But the fact that you see parents and other family members also, not just parents, but other family members, whether it's brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, whatever, rejecting family members because of who they are, it is quite disturbing, and it is quite destructive. And I want all of those other people out there, because to me it wasn't all that traumatic, again, and it's partially because of a lot of things from my childhood and stuff like that. So it wasn't traumatic to me, especially a couple of years ago at this point in time. But even when I was 15, I look back at it and it really wasn't all that traumatic to me. Everybody thought it should be. I got a lot of people that told me this should really bother you and this should be traumatic and you should be breaking it, but it wasn't Now, I never understood why, but it just wasn't built that way. But there's a lot of people that are. There's a lot of people that are very emotional. And so to have something like this happen to them is very tragic. And sometimes they, they either self-harm, or unalive themselves, or there's other paths they go down that are very destructive. And I want those people to know that there is a community out there. There are other people that are experiencing what they're experiencing, and they can find that community, and it doesn't have to be family.
Right.
Family is this notion that because somebody birthed you
or shares the same parent or parents as you,
shares the same DNA or something like that, that they get to treat you or abuse you in a certain way is bullshit. Family is the people that love you, that you surround yourself with, that are there for you day to day, and will listen to you and will honor who you are. No matter who you are.
Yeah, and that's the community that you build. And it doesn't, I'm not saying go out and join, a satanic temple congregation near you. What I'm saying is look to the people who support you, see you, love you, challenge you, who help you lead the best life you can, even when it's by disagreeing with you and pointing out things that are harmful.
Yeah, I mean, people make mistakes, and it's okay for people to point out when they make mistakes. That was one of the hardest things as a parent to do, is when do I step in as a parent?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Especially if I don't want to indoctrinate my children. I want my children to learn life, live life, feel safe and protected. I mean, all my daughters know that dad is there as their protector. I think one of them at some point, the teacher did something or said something or did something, and she was like, "Oh, just wait until I tell my dad."
Yeah,
you're gonna have to deal.
You're in so much deep crap.
You're in so much trouble when I tell my dad.
I love that though. I really do.
But that is a parent's job, is to be there as a protector for your children. It is not your job to tell your children how they have to believe, how they have to live, any of that sort of shit. You're there to guide, you're there to answer questions, and you're there to love them regardless. My children can become anything.
I want to be very clear. Indoctrination doesn't mean that you lead by example and you share certain values with your kids, or you bring them to experience different things in life so that they can grow as individuals or ask you questions. It means, quite literally, by definition, to teach a person or a group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. And that is the most important aspect of indoctrination: the lack of challenge, the lack of critical thinking, the inability to express confusion, concern, just that something doesn't make sense, and to have a conversation with someone, whether or not it ends up changing their mind, that's what it is not to indoctrinate. Indoctrination is telling someone, you're going to do this or else, you're kicked out. You're going to do this regardless of how you feel about it. I don't want to talk about it. It's not something that's open for the conversation. I hate that freaking term.
It's just the way we are.
This is who we are.
Yeah.
As a family, this is what we believe. Well, what if it isn't?
Yeah. And you do see that a lot. I mean, when I challenge Christians, and I challenge Christians quite often, I'll ask them, why are you a Christian? And a lot of times I get the same answer. Well, I was raised that way. Mm-hmm. Okay, did you ever challenge it? Did you ever think about it? Did you ever, have the possibility of thought to say, is there something else out there? And most of the time the answer is no.
Right. Why would I? That's just who we are.
Yeah. They have been taught from an early age not to challenge and not to critical think. Critical thinking is a bad thing.
I mean, you'll actually see them discuss the fact that it's promoted by evil to critical thinking itself. It's not to say that if you are a Christian because your family has been Christian forever. I said my first experience with religion as I know it today was through those programs that my mom went to. But really, my grandmother was Catholic forever. She's always been Catholic. But the interesting thing is she didn't push it. Did I go to a couple of services with her? Yeah, but I didn't really understand. And to me, it was kind of pretty. You go to this really ornate building. They've got these pretty red little candles and you can go light them. And then there's this stand up, sit down thing that you do. If you're not doing it every weekend, it's like, oh, this is interesting. This is different. But never did she say you're going to hell or you're bad for this and that was why, that unconditional love that she actually showed me helped me to formulate a lot of the things that I personally understand about family and love, and why it's so important to surround yourself with people who, regardless of how they personally feel, can still see you and respect you as you are.
Yeah. And so I guess as we kind of wrap this up, again, we've gone kind of into a little bit of my personal life, but it was for the reason to show this stuff really does happen. These aren't just rumors. These aren't just stories from, people on social media or whatnot. We see this in our congregation. We see it all the time.
Well, as parents, we've seen it from friends of our kids.
Yep.
As people in the community, we've seen it. And it's not just built around religion.
Nope.
It's definitely something that causes it to a greater degree from what I've seen. But it's built around any challenge to what a person believes they hold true. And it causes a lot of rifts, a lot of pain, and a lot of unnecessary loss in people's lives.
Yeah. And so if you are going through something like that, do find a community. If you're a Satanist, cool, reach out and see if you can, find a congregation in your area. Send me a direct message, or send me a message or something like that.
Same.
If you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, find other members in your community that, and I'm sure you will find people that understand what you're going through, because I'm sure many of them have gone through it before. I know plenty who have, and just know that even if your family, your supposed family, because that's what I call them if they reject their own children, just because your supposed family disowned you or rejected you doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means there's something wrong with them. This is a them issue. It's not a you issue. And you can find other people who will be more family to you than the people that birthed you or are supposed to be your family.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. And so take the time, find the people that will care for you, will give you unconditional love. Well, as unconditional as love gets.
Lots of love, but it should be unconditional. And I will say, if you are part of the LGBTQ community, there are places like GSA, like PFLAG, places like the Montrose Center if you're in the Houston area. There are places where you can find community or begin to find community if you're struggling and you're having a very hard time with your loss. There are places like the Trevor Project that are there, ready to listen and ready to help you through the things that you're struggling with and help you find resources. So, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, reach out and understand people care, that you matter, that you are a person that other people can love. You're lovable. Just because some people can't see that is not necessarily anything. It actually is nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Like I said, and I'll repeat this till the day I die, this is not a you issue, it's a them issue. The issue that my parents showed, that's their issue. That's their emotional baggage. That's their shit to work out. That is their issue, and that is their choice as well. These people are making a choice to treat their family that way. Not you. It is on them. So, yeah, I think with that, we can probably wrap this one up.
Absolutely. Just all we can tell you, love yourself, respect yourself. Don't allow people to shit on you because you think it's what, society expects of you. And understand that, regardless of what other people who are supposed to love you feel, that there is a community out there. And yeah, you do have a place in it.
Yeah. And hail Satan.
Hail Satan, guys.